Importance of emotional intelligence in your marriage. Hi, friends. Welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video is all about the importance of emotional intelligence in your married life. Why is emotional intelligence important for your relationship? Your relationship with your spouse is always emotional and sensitive. And unless you understand the emotions of your spouse, you cannot enjoy your marriage. If you do not emote properly towards your spouse, it will create tons of resentment between you. Emotions are that important in your marriage. And the way you use your emotions decides the quality of your marriage. When your emotions are respected and cared by your spouse, it makes your relationship with him or her decisively happy and fulfilled. But when you discard the emotions of your spouse, your relationship becomes unhappiness personified. Emotions have that much of power in making or breaking your marriage. Are you wondering how emotions can make or break your marriage? Your relationship with your spouse is an emotional storehouse. You emote various emotions towards your spouse in your day-to-day life. When love, care, and empathy are the predominant emotions you display towards your spouse, it signifies that you're using your emotions intelligently. There are times your spouse might argue unreasonably with you. When you're emotionally intelligent, you will realize that your spouse is just having a bad day and that he or she is not displaying hatred or bitterness towards you. Care, protectiveness, empathy, sympathy, and affection for your spouse are constructive emotions. Your marriage drastically needs these emotions. But sadly, these emotions are mostly ignored and underplayed by you in your married life. Hatred, bitterness, hostility, indifference, and resentment are very negative and destructive emotions. But you let these emotions dominate your relationship with your spouse. This is the reason you feel very unhappy in your married life. Many a time you feel that your spouse does not deserve you. You often feel interacting with your spouse boring and tedious. You feel resentful and angry by the way your spouse treats you. You also argue bitterly about your rights. Can you see how self-centered you are in emoting with your spouse? Unless there are speed breakers to such negative emotions, your marriage cannot endure. What should you do to minimize your negative attitude towards your spouse? And how do you maximize your positive emotions? This is where your emotional intelligence comes into play. What exactly is emotional intelligence? It is your ability to use your emotions the proper way. It is your capacity to understand the perspective of your spouse. It is the way you channelize your emotions to bring happiness and contentment into your relationship. Most of you feel that you need emotional intelligence only in your workplace or to deal with other people. You're wrong. You never interlink emotional intelligence to your relationship with your spouse. You should understand that the stability of your marriage depends upon your emotional intelligence. When you lack emotional intelligence in your relationship, you will never understand the perspective of your spouse. This is the reason your relationship struggles to find its foothold after a few years of your married life. Emotional intelligence can do the trick of reviving a marriage from its doldrums. Your emotional intelligence can make you do away with anger, resentment, and bitterness you often feel against your spouse. When you're emotionally intelligent, you will stop seeing everything from your angle. You will become more empathetic towards your spouse. Emotional intelligence will stop you from demanding that your spouse does everything according to your liking. You will cease to feel that you're always right and that your spouse is always wrong. You will become more appreciative towards your spouse. You will own up your mistakes. You will never take your spouse for granted. You will never let your small fights develop into major squabble between you. Your emotional intelligence will make you behave patiently towards your spouse. You will not be adamant and you're ready to change. You will be willing to adjust and tolerate the minor faults of your spouse. You will know your borderline with your spouse. You will control your anger and negative emotions. You will easily overlook the faults of your spouse. You will respect the individuality of your spouse. You will not intrude into the personal space of your spouse. When you're emotionally intelligent, you will instantly apologize for the hurt you inflict on your spouse. Only your emotional intelligence will make you embed these most wanted qualities into your relationship. Is emotional intelligence difficult to practice in your marriage? No, it is the simplest aspect of your marriage, but the most ignored one. It is not that you are unaware about the existence of emotional intelligence. You're emotionally intelligent in your workplace. It is easy to practice emotional intelligence in your workplace. There is a blueprint for your emotional intelligence in your profession. Maintaining your proficiency, coexisting amicably with your colleagues, being punctual and sincere are gateways to your success. So, being emotionally intelligent in your workplace is rather easy because the emotional intelligence you need for success in your workplace has a definite formula. It is like 2 plus 2 is 4. When you understand the blueprint of your work, everything falls into its slot. But there is no such formula for your marriage because your relationship with your spouse is an emotional storehouse. What is the nature of your emotions in your married life? Your emotions vacillate from one extreme to another. One day you're happy in your relationship. The next day you fight like cats and dogs with your spouse. The day you're happy with your spouse makes you feel that your relationship is working perfectly fine. But one day of your fight with your spouse is enough to make you feel that you're married a wrong person. The fluctuating emotions you feel towards your spouse makes you have wrong assumptions about your marriage. This is dangerous to your relationship. Have you ever analyzed why your spouse is behaving in a way you do not like? Have you ever thought from the viewpoint of your spouse? Have you ever discussed with your spouse about his or her needs? Most of you do not. You scarcely notice the emotions of your spouse. You're not emotionally supportive towards your spouse. You stop interacting with your spouse. You do not concentrate on his or her viewpoint. You should switch to the side of your spouse to understand his or her behavior. When you know the trick to channelize your emotions, there will be no unwanted anger and hostility between you. When you move away from your spouse, the gap between you widens until one day you lose sight of each other. When you embed emotional intelligence into your married life, it pumps fresh oxygen of love into your relationship. Your interaction with your spouse becomes easy and comfortable. You're ready to talk with your spouse to make your relationship work. Is it impossible to embed emotional intelligence into your relationship? It is very easy to practice. But you do not practice it as your attention is always focused on your own happiness and contentment. You feel happy only if your spouse behaves in a way you like. You feel content only when your spouse listens to your thoughts. You feel that your marriage is slipping out of your hands when your spouse is individualistic and independent. It shows your complete lack of emotional intelligence. Unless you know the trick to use your emotions intelligently, you cannot enjoy a good married life. Did this video make you understand the importance of emotional intelligence in your married life? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part, your relationship goal.